You know, I have to admit, it's actually been quite a while since my last Harry Potter review. I should probably get back to that. Actually, how long has it been since my last Harry Potter review? Holy crap, 8 months ago! I should probably do some catching up on this then. In fact, which Harry Potter movie am I even up to? Oh yeah, Half-Blood Prince. That's the one. I guess I'm reviewing Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was released in 2009. It was directed by David Yates and stars Harry... Was I seriously about to say stars Harry Potter? Well yeah, that's a given! His name's in the title of the movie! Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was released in 2009. It was directed by David Yates and stars Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, and was just like the last 5 films, was indeed based on the book of the same name, written by JK Rowling. Yes, I am actually saying this in every single review of this series, and damn, it's a mouthful. The main bulk of this movie is mostly taken up by Dumbledore and Harry working together to uncover the secrets of an important memory. And the main reason why they're trying to do this is because finding out the secrets of this memory may very well be the key to figuring out how to defeat Voldemort. While all of this is going on, Harry Potter is pretty much at the top of his grades as he's using a book that is known as being the property of the Half-Blood Prince. However, since he is doing so well all of a sudden, it's caused his friends to believe that there is something extremely sinister about this book. Welcome back to my Harry Potter marathon that I started well and truly over a year ago. Holy crap, I didn't think it'd take me this long to get through the series, but oh well. If you haven't seen them yet, then I have already reviewed all of the other previous movies in the series. And so far, I have thoroughly enjoyed each and every single one of them. There are a couple of Harry Potter movies where I have a couple of problems or flaws or nitpicks with, but as a whole, I have absolutely loved each and every single Harry Potter movie. And that really, for the most part, isn't an exception here. Unfortunately, I do have to say that Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, in my opinion, is by far my least favourite Harry Potter film in the entire series. And I have also found out that according to Harry Potter fans, that is not a very unpopular opinion. There are a lot of Harry Potter fans that claim that they like Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince the least. Actually, the only opinion that's just as common as Half-Blood Prince is also Goblet of Fire being their least favourite movie. Oh, and Order of the Phoenix. It's a pretty big debate. I mainly say that this is my least favourite movie in the series because this is the one that I have the most problems with, but don't get me wrong, I don't dislike this movie, I still find plenty of things to appreciate about it. Voldemort is officially back and everyone is now not only aware of it, but they're accepting it. Everyone has accepted that Voldemort has returned. And now he's going as far as attacking Muggles. Actually, I think it's kind of humorous that despite the fact I say that, ignoring the whole flashback scenes, Voldemort actually isn't in this movie. At all. Oops. But we are approaching the end of this series, so this is where the franchise goes into really, really dark territory. You know, even if Voldemort gets 0 seconds of screen time. Okay, it's probably in the book, but I haven't read the book yet. So just looking at this movie alone, can someone please try to explain to me what Voldemort was doing during the events of this movie? Because as far as I'm concerned, he was slouching on his couch watching documentaries about the human nose. Yeah, that's probably what he was doing. Yep, I'm gonna call it that. That's what he was doing. In my opinion, that's what he was doing during the events of this movie. And I also think I figured out why. Because Voldemort absolutely hates Harry with a fiery passion and wants nothing more than to kill him. However, he's also decided to just let Harry finish his 6th year at Hogwarts because, while he absolutely hates Harry with a passion, he still cares very deeply about Harry's education. He's a very misunderstood man. Alright, I delved way too deeply into that one. We're gonna move on. But all jokes aside, we are now in pretty dark territory. This is pretty much the bleakest and possibly the most unpleasant Harry Potter film in the entire series. It's definitely a big downer of a film compared to the other movies. There are some great long shots of Hogwarts, which is now very cold, dull, bleak, and at times completely empty, which is an extremely strong contrast compared to how Hogwarts looks back in Philosopher's Stone. And this really dark tone is also quite heavily reflected in the cinematography, which I'll talk about later. However, having all of that said, despite that, there's also a lot of really fun, uplifting scenes to sort of relieve the dread that is generated in this film, which prevents it from becoming flat out depressing. Not to mention it maintains a great sense of humour. Watching this movie again last night for the sake of this review, I was really quite surprised by this movie's sense of humour. There's actually quite a few really funny scenes throughout the movie.
I just apparated, didn't I?
Indeed. Quite successfully too, I might add. Most people vomit the first time.
Can't imagine why.
Hey, she's only interested in you because she thinks you're the chosen one.
But I am the chosen one. Okay, sorry. Kidding.
And quite possibly my personal favourite, the scene with the Felix Felicis, aka the Liquid Luck.
With a little bit of luck, with a little bit of luck, with a little bit, with a little bit, with a little bit of luck, you'll never work.
The scene when Harry drinks it and he completely transforms. He becomes a massive explosion of optimism. And it's incredibly funny and extremely lighthearted to, again, relieve the audience from the dread from the rest of the movie. That little big burst that Harry has when he's suddenly extremely optimistic, it's just such a delight to watch.
I'm going down to Hagrid's.
What? No, Harry, you've got to go and speak to Slughorn. We have a plan.
I know, but I've got a really good feeling about Hagrid's. I feel it's the place to be tonight. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Well, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Or Felix does. Hi!
And as I said before, the movie tells a compelling mystery about what happened with this memory, since they have this memory right from the get-go, but it's been tampered with. So they spend the entire movie trying to figure out what's happening in the real memory. Throughout the entire subplot, Harry and Dumbledore are together, and it is by far my favourite subplot in the entire movie. Also, I just really love the visual transition that we see between reality to when we are seeing a memory. When Harry looks into the bowl and we see this black liquid sort of slowly forming into what we eventually see as the memory. It's really cool stuff. One thing I also think is worth commenting on is, as Chris Stuckman said, this is by far the most uneventful Harry Potter film in the series. Now, I don't say it's so uneventful when it gets to the point where the main characters are just sitting around at school learning stuff all day. There is a proper plot with stuff like the book and the stuff between Harry and Dumbledore, but there aren't as many significant plot points as the other movies in the series. A lot of the movie is very casual, and a really large chunk of the film are just characters sitting or standing around and talking. It is much more dialogue driven than the other films, and there is little to no action. And yet, that really isn't a complaint, because the film still manages to keep my attention throughout the entire film. There's only a few small points in the movie where the film ever drags, and not once was I ever bored. That's why in some ways I think this is the most fascinating movie in the series, because I'm really quite fascinated with how the movie has so little going on in it, and yet it still manages to feel important and manages to maintain my attention just as well as the other movies in the series. Though if there's one subplot I'm really not a fan of, and where I feel like the movie does kind of drag a little, it's the whole romantic subplot. There's quite a few things going on in terms of relationships. There's stuff going on between Ron and Lavender, even though that was more playful comedy, and there's also stuff between Harry and Ginny, which I thought was pretty bad. I think the best scene between the two is really the scene when Ginny decides to help Harry get rid of the book by chucking it in the room of requirement. That's really the only scene I at all like with the two together. But a lot of the romance stuff just felt really forced. It's by far the weakest aspect in the series in my opinion. But going back to positives for a minute, I absolutely love the stuff between Harry and Dumbledore. Not only is this subplot fascinating and by far the most interesting stuff in the movie, but I just love seeing the two work together as a team. Seeing Harry and Dumbledore together is extremely satisfying. Dumbledore just has this extremely calming presence, and it just makes him extremely pleasant to be around. There's just something about him that's really comforting, and he feels like he generates this real sense of safety. And you can totally understand why Harry spends so much time around him in this movie. Aside from the fact, well, Dumbledore asked him to. I just love seeing these two together. And the scene when Harry has to force Dumbledore to drink the poisoned water, whatever that stuff is, yeah, that scene was intense. And the execution of the scene when Dumbledore, spoiler alert, dies, that scene is incredibly powerful. And it is by far, in my opinion, the saddest moment in the entire series. Unfortunately, I was never ever really shocked by Dumbledore's death because I knew about his death going into the series, so I knew it was coming the first time I watched this movie, but it was still incredibly effective. Now, I want to talk about a couple of the performances for a little bit. Daniel Radcliffe apparently said that he really wasn't proud of the performance that he gave in this movie in particular, and to an extent, I can sort of see why. I do admit that, in my opinion, it is his weakest performance in the series, but that isn't saying much because he is still excellent as the title character. One scene that stands out to me in particular is the scene when he is yelling at Snape for killing Dumbledore. Everything from his physical acting to his tone of voice, you really buy that he feels really hurt and betrayed. Yes, he feels betrayed by the teacher that he's absolutely hated for the last 6 years. But another scene where he stands out to me is something that is extremely insignificant, but I still highly appreciate it, and it's something that happens right at the very beginning of the movie. Harry and Dumbledore are in this house that is completely trashed up. It is pretty much as terrible as you could imagine. All the lights are dead, everything is shattered and broken and all over the place, and the house itself feels like it's completely falling apart. And then Dumbledore just simply flicks his wand, and everything is completely restored, and the house looks extremely expensive and almost looks like the inside of a precious mansion. And Harry is just in awe. He's been exposed to the Wizarding World for about 5 years by this point, and yet he still has that look of awe on his face, and he's still blown away by the concept of magic. And the fact he's able to maintain that sense of wonder and awe this far into the series is something I really have to compliment. Another character I'd still like to mention is Draco.
Damn it, I still can't stand this character!
Sorry about that. I just had a moment there. He's still better than Umbridge. Actually, one compliment I do have to give Draco in this movie is the fact he is much more compelling in this film. He is pretty much a Death Eater by this point, and he's no longer just a stereotypical school bully like he was in the past films, but now he has been assigned to do something flat out evil. He's been given the task by Voldemort to kill Dumbledore, and you can really see this internal conflict that he has about his fear of killing Dumbledore versus his fear of being killed by Voldemort. You actually see a little bit of growth in this character, which is really cool. But as I said before, I still think that this is my least favourite Harry Potter movie, so I'm going to go back and talk about some of my major criticisms with the film. For starters, like I said, the overall film is just incredibly uneventful, and the romance stuff is just pretty bad. But another issue I have with this movie is that out of the rest of the series, this one by far feels the most cookie cutter for me. There are things about the overall plot about it that feel missing. One example is the lack of Dumbledore's funeral. Now, I know that you actually read about Dumbledore's funeral in the book, but keep in mind, I haven't read the book yet. So keep in mind that when I'm saying that the movie feels cookie cutter and there are things that feel missing, this is coming from someone who has not read the book. Even before I knew you actually see Dumbledore's funeral in the book, I always thought to myself at the back of my head watching this movie, shouldn't they have a scene where we see Dumbledore's funeral? It just always felt off and it didn't feel right to me that we never got a scene with Dumbledore's funeral. And again, I've had this thought before I even knew it was in the book. Another major question I have is why Harry is so suddenly not playing Quidditch. Yeah, Harry is no longer playing Quidditch anymore and now he's more just coaching and that sort of thing. And so whenever we are watching sequences involving Quidditch, I'm always asking myself exactly why. Now I know back in the book of Order of the Phoenix, Umbridge pretty much completely banned Harry from ever being able to play Quidditch ever again. And that's the reason why he's no longer playing Quidditch in the book. Because even though Umbridge may have said he's never allowed to play Quidditch in the book, that scene never happens in the movie. So as far as the movies are concerned, he's still allowed to play Quidditch. So why isn't he playing it anymore? It's just something that's always felt off to me because that scene with Umbridge never happened in the movie. If a movie's gonna take out a scene like that, then why don't they at the very least explain why Harry's no longer playing Quidditch? I know it's not a major thing to be talking about, but it still really irritated me. And then there's the whole Half-Blood Prince subplot. Yeah, despite the fact this is the title of the movie, this one feels incredibly glossed over, and only a small fraction of the movie is actually taken up by this Half-Blood Prince stuff. It feels like you could take everything about the movie that actually involves the Half-Blood Prince, and the movie would only be about 20 minutes long. So when it comes to really big payoffs like Severus Snape saying that he is the Half-Blood Prince, there's really no impact because it lacks foreshadowing, and it just feels really glossed over, and again, there's probably a lot more details about this subplot in the book, but again, I haven't read the book yet. And as someone who hasn't read the book yet, I can say that it feels very cookie cutter, and the overall plot twist about who the Half-Blood Prince is, that stuff is just incredibly shallow. It's just kind of mentioned briefly a couple times throughout the film, and then there's a twist about it, and you're kind of like, oh, you're supposed to be surprised by this thing. Oh well. Which is a big problem considering the movie is literally called The Half-Blood Prince. And there are plenty of scenes in the movie that could have been replaced with more details about what's going on with this book and why it's so apparently dangerous. Because they make a fuss about the book being bad, but they never really explain why it's bad. Like, it's making him exceptionally good at what he's doing, but where exactly is the downside again? Is it using dark magic or something? It really isn't explained properly. I just wish there was a lot more going on about that. I feel like there's a ton of really important details that should have been explored upon, and yet what we get are stuff that feels more like filler. Stuff that I don't feel like really needs to be in this movie. So they should have replaced a lot of stuff from the movie and replaced it with more information about this book. Another issue I have with this movie is the cinematography. Now, a lot of people said that they thought that this movie has the best cinematography in the entire series. And at first I actually agreed, but when I come to think about it, I really think this is the worst looking Harry Potter film in the entire series. As I said before, this is a really dark movie, so to complement that, most of the cinematography in the movie, most of it is extremely bleak, bland, and dull, and lifeless. And when I think of this movie, I just think of a lot of browns and greys. And it's very lacking in colour, and just a really unpleasant looking movie. Now, I'll admit that colour grading is really important for movies like this, but I think they took the colour grading a little bit too far. Because at times the movie is so brown or grey or discoloured or so desaturated looking that it gets to the point where the movie looks like it could have been in black and white and there would have been absolutely no difference. There is very little colour in this movie, and so when we get a few scenes that do have colour in it, at a visual standpoint, those are my favourite scenes in the movie because this movie is just incredibly dull and bleak looking. And I'm thinking, thank God they got rid of it for the last two movies. The camera itself is composed really well, there's a lot of nice shots, but I am not a fan of the colour grading. But other aspects of the cinematography is also really good. After being missing for like 2 or 3 movies, we finally have another full Quidditch match. And it is by far the best looking Quidditch match in the entire franchise. It's also fun seeing Quidditch matches in different kinds of weather. We've now got Quidditch matches that took place in the sun, some that took place in the rain, some that took place in the snow. So throughout the series, we get quite a bit of variety of different Quidditch matches. And like I said, this is by far the best looking one to date. And I also have to say, I absolutely love the way the final scene of the movie is shot. Because as Harry, Ron and Hermione are all looking out of the window on that balcony looking into the sun, suddenly this movie has a lot more colour in it. And the sudden burst of colour in this scene feels like a symbol of hope that they are seeing. Like they're looking out into the distance saying that we will eventually defeat Voldemort, and the sunburst of colour is this optimistic feeling that everything will eventually be okay. So I love how the final scene of the movie is shot. And that's about everything I have to say about Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. While it is definitely my least favourite Harry Potter movie, I still can't deny that it is a really, really good movie. I love Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Just not as much as the other ones. But still, I love this movie. And that's all I have for today, so... What? You think I'm missing something? Oh, that! I've actually decided I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't really like trying to conform movies into a box where I try to give it a letter or a number, because it's actually surprisingly difficult. There's been tons of occasions where I regret the rating I gave a movie, and overall, a lot of people just only look at the letter or number you gave it and only take that away from the review, and that's not what I want. I want you to be able to know how I felt about the movie purely based on what I said about it. So from now on, I'm going to get rid of my rating system and I'm just going to let my review for the movie speak for itself. And if I ever bring grades back, it'll probably be in a more flexible, freestyle method like Jeremy Jahns uses. Only more original. So yeah, I'm not going to give this movie a grade, I'm just going to say I really, really like it, but it's my least favourite in the series. And having that said, thank you all so much for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for my review for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. I promise I will not take several months to get this one out. But until then, yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers!